Damamukanidana Sutra, Chapter 25. Bhikkhuni Patacara. Once upon a time, in the kingdom of Shravasti, there was a king named Pasenadi. Under his rule, the country prospered, but after his death, his son, King Viradaka, inherited the throne. However, King Viradaka was a cruel and tyrannical ruler. He expelled the intoxicated elephants, trampled the people, and killed countless innocent citizens, plunging the entire nation into fear and chaos. In such circumstances, many noble women, witnessing the king's brutality, were filled with sadness and despair. They grew weary of worldly life, believing it to be full of suffering, and decided to renounce their worldly lives together to become bhikkhunis, seeking inner peace and liberation. Among these women were 500 of the most noble and beautiful in the kingdom, but they resolutely abandoned worldly wealth and glory to choose the path of practice. However, although these bhikkhunis were in the Buddhist community, they still found themselves unable to escape the problems and desires within their hearts. They felt confused and decided to seek guidance together to see if they could find a path to liberation. First, they approached a bhikkhuni named Sona, asking her how to restrain their problems. Upon hearing their request, Bhikkhuni Sona harbored impure thoughts. She secretly thought, if these bhikkhunis return to secular life, then their robes and bowls will belong to me, and I can live more comfortably. So she said to the bhikkhunis, all of you were born into noble families, possessing wealth, status, and all good things. Why renounce these things to practice? Wouldn't it be better to return to a harmonious married life and enjoy life as you please? Hearing these words, the bhikkhunis felt even more confused and saddened, and they left Sona's residence. Then, they arrived at the residence of another bhikkhuni, named Bhikkhuni Patacara. They bowed before Bhikkhuni Patacara and expressed their confusion. Although we have renounced the world, our hearts are still full of problems and desires, and we cannot find true peace. We hope that you can compassionately enlighten us and help us alleviate this suffering. Bhikkhuni Patacara listened to their words, smiled softly, and said, do you wish to know about the past, the present, or the future? The bhikkhunis replied, we do not want to talk about the past or the future, we only hope to understand the problems of the present to help us resolve the doubts in our hearts. Then, Bhikkhuni Patacara began to tell her own story, a tale filled with suffering and lessons. She said, originally, I was the daughter of a Brahmin family, rich and well off, with my father being the most respected Brahmin in the kingdom. Later, I married a young, intelligent, and handsome Brahmin, and after marriage, we formed a family and had children. At that time, I thought I was the happiest person in the world. However, the happiness did not last long. Once, I became pregnant, and as my due date approached, I told my husband, I want to return to my parents' house to give birth so I can receive their care. My husband agreed, and we set off towards my parents' house. However, halfway there, I suddenly felt abdominal pain and rested under a large tree. That night, I gave birth to a boy, but at that moment, a venomous snake came and bit my husband, killing him. I called his name, but he never woke up again. I was heartbroken, holding my newborn, and continued with my elder son. On the way, I encountered a deep and wide river. First, I carried my younger son across and then returned to fetch my elder son. Unexpectedly, my elder son, seeing me return, walked towards the river himself and was swept away by the water. I chased after him desperately but could not save him, I could only watch as he was swallowed by the river. When I returned to the other side, I found that my younger son had been devoured by wolves, leaving only a pool of blood. I fainted again, and when I awoke, I dragged my exhausted body forward. Later, I met a Brahmin who was a friend of my father. He took me in and treated me like his own daughter. However, fate did not spare me. I remarried, but my new husband was ill-tempered and forced me to eat my newborn during childbirth. I could not bear such a life, so I escaped from him. After that, I experienced even more suffering. Every time I thought I had found support, I fell into deeper pain. I was buried alive, kidnapped by robbers, and forced to be buried with the dead. These experiences made me deeply understand that worldly life is full of endless suffering and impermanence. Finally, I came to the Buddha and told him my suffering, requesting to renounce the world and practice. The Buddha compassionately accepted me and allowed the great Bhikkhuni of loving kindness to teach me the precepts. Under the guidance of the Dharma, I understood the truth of life, learned to let go of attachments, and finally attained the fruit of an arahant. The story of Bhikkhuni Patacara deeply shocked the 500 Bhikkhunis. They understood that worldly life is like a cage and that desires are like a burning fire that will consume everything. They committed to letting go of their inner attachments and focusing on their practice. Finally, under the guidance of Bhikkhuni Patacara, all 500 Bhikkhunis attained the fruit of arahant, achieving inner peace and liberation. When the Buddha heard this, he praised Bhikkhuni Patacara, saying, "Excellent, Bhikkhuni Patacara! As a practitioner, being able to teach the Dharma to others is what makes one a true disciple of the Buddha." The assembly, hearing this story, felt joy and committed to practicing diligently, seeking inner peace and wisdom. Since then, the wisdom and compassion of Bhikkhuni Patacara became a model for future generations to learn from, and her story was passed down through the ages, reminding people to value the present, distance themselves from desires, and seek the true path of liberation.